We do know the attacker was identified as 42-year-old Army veteran Samsud-Din Jabbar. He is a U.S. citizen. He is from Texas. Authorities say that he posted 5 videos online through Facebook, and that was on that same night through his Facebook account. In one, he talked about killing his own family. Authorities use that word you heard there, inspired. They say he's inspired by ISIS. But that, of course, is a kind of term of art in these law enforcement and terror investigations. It's very different from an operational link or anything of the kind. Indeed, at this point, they are not releasing or sharing any evidence that would suggest they have determined any direct ties to the terror group. Now, after this attack, devices that could be determined to be homemade bombs were also found basically around the pickup truck and elsewhere in that French Quarter. Investigators are also searching the attacker's home. New Orleans is under very increased vigilant security now, but there is still life going on in the New Year's and the New Year's traditions, which include what was a now rescheduled Sugar Bowl that's underway with the security in place. The mayor states Bourbon Street will actually be open again for people tonight. In New Orleans, Bourbon Street is one of the most well-known areas that people gather for partying, for going to bars, for music, and you can see they are not shutting that down for the foreseeable future, even with the terrible loss of life there. There's also new details about that other incident in Las Vegas where a Tesla Cybertruck exploded, and it did so right outside a Trump hotel. It killed 1, it injured 7. The Las Vegas sheriff says the attack was most likely a suicide.
Now, further complicating this identification of this individual, we also discovered through the coroner's office that the individual had sustained a gunshot wound to the head prior to the detonation of the vehicle. One of the handguns was found at his feet inside of the vehicle.
And that individual is a member of the active duty special operations for the Army. So he was a current Army member and was on an approved leave. The truck was detonated with consumer fireworks, so nothing more commercial grade or military grade has been discovered in relation to what happened there. Investigators also looking at a residence in Colorado Springs. Authorities see no current, quote, definitive link between these two incidents, although, of course, they are both being investigated and looked at in the context of any possible Homeland Security implications. Both vehicles were rented using the same app, which is called Turo. It's basically a consumer-to-consumer app, sort of like an Airbnb for cars. So that's the latest in these very sad New Year's Day sort of stories. I want to bring in Frank Figluzzi, a former FBI counterintelligence expert, and Cynthia Miller-Idris, director for the Polarization and Extreme Research and Innovation Lab at American U, also author of Hate in the Homeland. Frank, we know that all big gatherings, including, of course, holiday events, can be a type of target for anyone from a lone wolf or a miscreant, or someone who wants to do regular crime, to someone who might have other ideological agendas. How do you interpret what we've learned so far, specifically about the New Orleans attack?
Yeah, look, the confidence we're hearing from the FBI with regard to, quote, 100% ISIS motivated, ISIS inspired, gives me some sense of comfort that they're figuring this out, and they see where they're going, and they see where this man has been in his life, and they're already seeing evidence, whether it's from devices, phones, a number of devices recovered, both in his Houston residence and in the Airbnb in New Orleans. And what we're seeing here is most likely, at this point in time, a lone actor who feels affiliated with ISIS, but probably didn't get actual direction. It's sad that you don't need active direction and training to assemble a couple of live IEDs and to plan this kind of thing. You can get all of that out of kind of the training playbook on the internet.
Cynthia, how do you view the attack in the context of the global threat from these kind of organizations?
Yeah, I agree with Frank. I think we're lucky here that the indications are really clear what this was. We can identify it, and coming on the heels of an FBI warning on December 6th that we were likely to see vehicle ramming incidents at large crowds during the holiday season. It's also not surprising that the tactic was employed. And in the case of far-right extremism, what we've seen over the last 25 years is every single terrorist actor essentially has also been someone who's sort of inspired by propaganda, but not a member of a group or a cell, not taking operational support. And I think that's the kind of thing that the internet really enables and requires a different kind of prevention than the typical kind of secondary prevention we use, which is working on preventing an already radicalized actor from taking violent action. We need to think about intervening much more upstream.
Let me read you, Cynthia, some of the reporting on this, because the terror attack confirms what many in counterterror world, the world both of you know well, have been saying for the past year, which is, and this is according to NBC, quote, ISIS remains a stubborn and persistent threat, one which simply isn't going to fade away. And that's according to an expert with the Sufan Group that looks at global security. Cynthia, what is the distinction there, though, between these operational efforts, or what we've seen, say, in the Middle East war of the last year, versus what we're hearing with inspired, or what you described as sort of radicalization or some sort of action at a distance? And is that harder to patrol here in the United States?
Yeah, it's much harder to patrol with what are our traditional strengths on the law enforcement side, which would be things like infiltration and monitoring and surveillance and breaking up plots that can be detected when there's a cell, when there's a commander, an operational leader. And the FBI does a fantastic job actually breaking up dozens of plots like that every year. And we're lucky that they do that. But when you have individuals who are inspired by propaganda that might be produced by groups, but are not receiving kind of operational support or leadership guidance, instruction to act, they're not collaborating with anyone else to do that. They're a lone actor taking action, learning how to do it through playbooks available online, inspired sometimes by communities of people online who egg them on. In the case of white supremacist extremists, for example, where they have kill counts and kind of game cards sometimes even, and refer to each other as saints and disciples. I mean, but they're not planning things together. That makes it really hard to interrupt with traditional tactics.
President Biden has spoken out on this. Frank, take a listen.
People in New Orleans are sending an unmistakable message. They will not let this attack or the attackers' deluded ideology overcome us. None of us should fear that he'll overcome us. We're going to continue to relentlessly pursue ISIS and other terrorist organizations where they are, and they'll find no safe harbor here.
That's the current president. Of course, we're in an approaching transition. The president-elect responded online, not with the same emphasis on resolve, but sort of making some claims that were not accurate or linking it to other immigration issues. Immigration is a huge issue, including involving crime, but not this particular American citizen. Your thoughts on all the above?
Yeah, look, this notion that you can, quote, make ISIS go away, get rid of international terrorism, all you have to do is either build a wall or prevent migration of any kind, and we'll be fine. I think, of course, the facts speak against that. The facts are that a large proportion of violent jihadists that act out in the United States are American-born. They're not coming from somewhere else. What's coming from somewhere else is the radicalization online, the remote radicalization. And until we start doing things like teaching young people to disavow the kind of ideology they're getting fed, until we do things to make other alternatives available for military veterans, who we see now both in the Las Vegas incident and in the New Orleans incident, who have lived by a sense of mission and purpose and get out of the military or are still in the military and feel like they're lacking that in their lives. Until we get a hold of those factors, we're not going to get a handle on this.
Cynthia?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that the two kinds of major things we need to see now are media and digital literacy that helps equip people with tools to be more skeptical of the propaganda they see online, to recognize it, to reject it for what it is, and to create off-ramps in communities of parents, teachers, mental health counselors, coaches, others who can recognize some of the early warning signs in their community members and know how to get more help, And we also need to forge ways to find a sense of purpose, meaning, duty, ways to engage in the kinds of things that are leading to a wide variety of bad outcomes for men, from deaths of despair to overdose and high suicide rates. I mean, we have a lot of problems that lead people down pathways, and radicalization is only one of them. And we can intervene much earlier and get at some of those root causes in ways that would keep all communities a lot safer.
Mm-hmm. All really fair points as we make sense of all this and gather all the evidence. Cynthia and Frank, my thanks to you, and a Happy New Year even amidst that tragedy and that topic. Let me tell folks what's coming up. We're going to have a special guest looking at the populist awakening as wealth inequality surges, but some are calling for more radical challenges to capitalism itself. J.D. Vance has been talking up a lot of MAGA rhetoric, including the idea that maybe Trump can just ignore certain courts. He is, in a way, getting a rebuke from the highest court. We have that story coming up. But first, the big House vote on the new speaker tomorrow after a tough end of the year for House Republicans. We're back on that in just 90 seconds.
St. Jude, they gave it 110% every time. And for Kennedy to get treatment here without having to pay anything was amazing.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical, so I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies, or call 1-800-513-7100. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
My little miracle is Beckett.
I've died every day waiting for you.
We wouldn't be where we are without St. Jude, and in turn, we wouldn't be where we are without those people that have donated.
We have a Titanic on the crash course with the iceberg, and our country fiscally is going to have a disaster. And this is a fault of Congress. This is our constitutional duty. If he's not willing to do it, then he's not worth to be a speaker.
Happy New Year, politics style. It guys depends who you are and how you feel about the new year politically. But House Republicans are going to begin their new year quite officially tomorrow, and they've got some business to deal with. If you remember the chaos of the speaker decision just last time with Kevin McCarthy facing off with Matt Gaetz, a lot's changed. Indeed, neither of those individuals are still in the House. And McCarthy, the deal he struck, got him the gavel, but ultimately a deal that didn't protect him from a narrow margin. And that matters because tomorrow they have a very narrow margin as well. But it was all of that drama, if you remember it, that led to Mike Johnson getting the gavel. And now that brings us to tomorrow. You may remember there are different dates in our Constitution for when things start. So while President-elect Trump only assumes office later in January, on the 20th, Congress begins tomorrow, January 3rd. And first, it's got to pick its speaker, either re-elect Johnson or find someone else. And that's a test because House Republicans actually will have tomorrow, quote, the smallest House majority in history, as the New York Times put it. That assumes if the Democrats under Jeffries will be voting on a party line, which is almost always how it goes with these things, then Johnson can actually only afford to lose a single Republican vote. Well, take a look at this. He already has lost one, as Republican Congressman Massey says he's not backing Johnson. But there is an ace in the hole here in a MAGA party that is getting ready for the return of President-elect Trump. Well, he has endorsed Johnson, which kind of resolves it for a large number of House Republicans, but others sound skeptical.
He doesn't have my vote, and I think he's losing political capital by the second.
I'll make up my mind on Friday.
We do need to consider whether, if we're going to advance Mr. Trump's agenda, whether the current leadership is what we need.
I don't trust him that he's going to deliver. For the last year, he's been a speaker every time he folded to the swamp.
Now, let's be clear. There is nothing wrong with a party having a debate over who its leader should be, and they're free to debate this tomorrow. Mike Johnson doesn't have any better automatic claim than anyone else. He just has this recent experience. And that's where this story is about more than just political infighting, because the experience under Johnson is not exactly what Republicans think is going to help them. A lot of the members of the party think that Donald Trump and the economy powered them to the November finish they had, but not Mike Johnson's particular record. The most recent Congress, with Republicans in the House, was one of the least productive in decades. And Johnson, although he, again, had a tough job in a tight margin, had to deal with Republican rebels. He had to often try to use the Democratic side for their votes. And then, in our partisan MAGA era, while in the old days, that used to actually be praised. There are folks, if you remember, who used to talk about Reagan sitting down with Democrat Tip O'Neill and them working it out. That used to be a, quote, good thing, as Martha Stewart would say. But for many MAGA Republicans, the idea that Johnson would work with Democrats on anything, national security, the Ukraine war, keeping the government running, anything like that, was itself controversial.
Congratulations, you've added to the debt since you were given the majority again on November 5th. It's embarrassing. It's shameful. I'm absolutely sickened by a party that campaigns on fiscal responsibility and has the temerity to go forward to the American people and say, you think this is fiscally responsible. It is absolutely ridiculous.
And that's a top Republican criticizing what the Republicans were doing, again, under Johnson. Now, Democrats see a possible silver lining. A Republican Party that begins this year the way it ended last year, fighting with itself, or the last Congress, the way that began, which I just mentioned, with Gates and Johnson, which led to all of this, is a party that might not be very organized about making radical, big changes in the conservative or MAGA direction. If they're busy just trying to figure out who their speaker is and what he can do with a very narrow margin. So next we turn to someone who knows these issues inside and out and has a keen eye and a concern about the MAGA agenda. Bill Kristol is here next.
The fact that St. Jude take care of all this is what's keeping my baby girl alive.
It's everything for us. We wouldn't know what to do if we couldn't afford for our little girl to survive, and St. Jude gives us that.
My name is Dawn. I live in Central Texas. I'm a military spouse and a certified dog trainer. I started noticing there was this wall up that I couldn't push through, and that was frustrating. That's when I decided to try Prevagen. I'd seen the commercials, and the people seemed really authentic, and it seemed to really help them. After taking Prevagen, I can say unequivocally, it has made a huge difference in my life.
Prevagen, at stores everywhere without a prescription.
Hey, take a moment. Do you know who we are? We're the kids you champion every day. We're the ones who dream big, and because of you, our dreams become a reality. These are more than just words. This is what we're all about. This is Shriners Children's. Because for more than 100 years now, Shriners Children's has been on a mission to provide the most amazing care anywhere. And guess what? It's working. With more than 100 access points to care, Shriners Children's is able to reach more kids in even more places all around the world. When we need them the most, their amazing doctors and nurses are treating kids in the US, Canada, Mexico, and Latin America. And they're helping kids from more than 100 other countries, too. And the best part? They're doing all of this regardless of a family's ability to pay. And someone else helps make it all possible. You. Do. You. Do. You too! It's true. You're pretty awesome.
When you go online to Love Shriners,
not having that happen. I think that will hold through tomorrow. That is, I think people understand that they can't afford to have another McCarthy-type fight at the beginning of Trump's presidency, and Trump has weighed in, and I suspect that gets Johnson the votes he needs. After that, on the other hand, all bets are off. Such a narrow majority, and in a weird way, there was more, and the deals he cut with Democrats, which he got away with in 2020, late 23, and then throughout 2024, because Trump was willing to kind of go along with him. He would grumble, but ended up with him, and even in December, right? Trump wanted the debt ceiling extended forever, and then it didn't happen, and Trump didn't make a huge fuss about it. I think a lot of that pressure, in a weird way, it'll be harder once Trump's actually president, because then Trump's not going to lose, and they're not going to lose the majority for another 2 years. So ideologues and people with their own pet projects and people from New York and California who want different tax bill from the people from elsewhere, a lot of those pressures really could start to fracture the majority. But I suspect he makes it through this week.
Yeah, and you draw attention to the fact that there were a lot of warring factions. It was a narrow majority, and Johnson got things done in a way that McCarthy couldn't, and he benefited from a type of fatigue. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation, Bill, where you got 4 different people, you're trying to pick a restaurant, and sushi, no, someone can't have that. Pizza, no, I had pizza last night. Okay, Greek, I don't like Greek. At a certain point, 4th, 5th, 6th restaurant, you might land on one that had it been suggested first, there would have been a veto. And eventually, people are fatigued. And Johnson, I'm arguing, is that obviously Thai restaurant, or you name it, whatever type, where they said, you know what, we can't do this forever. And so it's kind of funny. And I want to show you something with all of that lead up to what we're going to get tomorrow in the next 2 years, because this is how we got here. Take a look.
A speaker has not been elected.
This dramatic day that is not turning out remotely the way Kevin McCarthy had hoped.
The House is not in order.
Kevin McCarthy celebrating a victory that almost didn't happen.
Kevin McCarthy was ousted from his role as Speaker of the House by fellow Republicans.
House Republicans have put their names behind someone who has been called the most important architect of the Electoral College objections.
Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana has received 220 votes.
I want to thank Leader Jeffries. I do look forward to working with you on behalf of the American people.
How much does that runway affect whether the party has a stomach for a big fight, as you said, tomorrow when Trump's weighed in, or really over the next 2 years?
So I think tomorrow is very different from the next 2 years. I liked your restaurant analogy. Made me feel kind of hungry, actually. But I have to see what food to get tonight. But it's as if it's already 7 at night and you haven't decided on the restaurant. You know what? You satisfy, as they say in economics, right? You take a place that's okay with everyone. It's not the greatest. It's okay. Everyone semi-enjoys their dinner. The problem, I guess, for the 2 years is then you're having conversations about where should we go 2 weeks from now for dinner. I hear this place is great. I hear this place is great. I prefer this, right? And in a way, it's harder to come to without the pressure of having to come to agreement, of having Trump on the ballot, of having to preserve the majority. I think it's a much tougher time. And here's one instance. Trump just last week once again raised the debt ceiling, right? He said, as soon as the Republicans take charge of Congress, I want the debt ceiling extended so it happens on Biden's watch. Trump's dream is the Republicans pass it. Biden has the difficult choice of whether to sign something that he sort of has said he believes in, which is getting rid of or extending the debt ceiling, but doing a favor for Trump so it doesn't come to Trump's desk. The trouble is they don't have enough Republican votes to pass that. I don't think Democrats are going to help in the next 2 weeks. So the notion that Trump can just snap his fingers and have the Republicans all fall in line, that would be the test. I mean, one test will be tomorrow, the speaker vote. Will they in the next 2 weeks do what Trump explicitly asked them to do, which is extend the debt ceiling and put that baby in Biden's lap? And I suspect Chip Roy and some of those people you showed aren't going to do that. And that might be a bit of a harbinger of what it could be like when he actually gets to legislation. For all that the Republicans are united on the border and immigration and some of these issues, they're not all united on all the details of it, right? And it's such a thin majority. And then the Senate has its own views. I think you would have lost a lot of money. I probably would have lost some money betting that Republicans wouldn't cave to Trump over the last 8 years, obviously, right? We've seen time and time again, maybe Mitch McConnell will stand up this time, maybe John Thune, maybe the Republicans. They never do on the important stuff. Little different this time, though, when they're actually trying to pass policy legislation as opposed to just defending Trump against what they see as partisan Democratic and left-wing attacks. And so I do think they will have more trouble passing the legislation than they did just defending Trump.
Well, I'm reminded of the great Yogi Berra, Bill, who said you can observe a lot by watching. And what we've watched in the way the year ended for Republicans with the spending clash was Elon Musk doesn't have a firm grasp of the House floor process, which is part of how he got very publicly outmaneuvered. I mean, no disrespect to him. He has been busy doing other things with his time and businesses, and he is more knowledgeable about other things. But anyone who's worked as a House staffer for a year would have had a better understanding of how Musk was driving himself and by proxy, to some degree, Trump and the movement into a wall. And he did, because they didn't get what they wanted out of that. And I forgive all viewers who were busy getting ready for the holidays or a break who didn't follow it closely, but they face planted. And what you can observe by watching is that if the leadership structure is demanding things that would be hard in any scenario, right? Because they think you can just change the budget like this, like it's a company that you own. And then that's against Johnson with this narrow vote margin. How much of that is going to continue to play out in these next several months where they may lose things? Or do you think Elon Musk doesn't care because a little bit like Trump, part of this is a show for him?
It's a very good way of posing the question. I would just put it therefore in this way. Think of who's going to be the most powerful people in the Trump White House. Let's leave Musk aside as kind of an outsider. Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff and immigration hardliners at least, and Russ Vought, the OMB director, who they both worked in the House. And whatever you think of them, and I don't think much of them, they know how the system works down there. Now, they may be unrealistic in what they hope to accomplish. They may not have a good feel for whatever few moderate Republicans are left. They don't know the Senate as well. J.D. Vance presumably knows the Senate a little bit. He's been there 2 years. Actually, if those three are running things, I would say as someone who won't like Trump's legislative agenda, I'd be more worried. I think those guys will figure out what they can do in reconciliation, what they can't do, what they might have to give up. The more the Musks of the world have Trump's ear and say, hey, you should get rid of this, you should do that. And the more Trump just has his own, pet projects that he hasn't consulted with Miller or Vought on, I think the more trouble they're in. So it'll be interesting to see how powerful Musk is once the transition ends. Once there's, in my experience, I mean, but again, it's a different world, obviously. But there's an actual White House. There are actual pieces of legislation, and they're drafting the legislation, and you're running OMB, and you're running Treasury, and you're running the Domestic Policy Council and stuff. Those people have a lot of power usually, and the outsiders tend to recede a little bit. The transition when they're all sitting around Mar-a-Lago, that's the time, presumably, of Musk's, strongest influence on Trump. Or maybe not, though. Trump isn't a typical president, and it won't be a typical White House, I suppose.
Yeah. All very interesting. Bill, Happy New Year. We'll keep up with you. Thanks for being here. Let me tell folks what's coming up. Chief Justice Roberts speaking out against all of this talk about flouting the law and saying, no, the rule of law will hold. But first, I want to turn to this important populist uprising from how healthcare companies and these health insurance companies are abusing their policies, hurting people, to rising economic inequality. We have a very special guest on this important topic next.
Want the fastest working GLP-1 for half the price? Ro now offers FDA-approved weight loss injections cheaper, with results you can see faster. Lose 15% of your weight with a formula from Eli Lilly. See if you qualify at ro.co/TV.
When the time comes to act, are you all in for the things that really matter?
I am all in for racial justice.
I'm all in for voting rights.
I'm all in for women's rights.
I'm all in for civil rights.
The time is now to stand up for a future you believe in. to be all in for the rights of Black communities across the U.S., to keep advancing the future we envision for the America we love. You can do it now by supporting the NAACP. Call or go online now to become a champion for change. Your donation of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, will help NAACP keep advancing in the fight for equity and justice. Your support will help ensure that all students can learn, businesses can thrive, communities can advance, and everyone can vote. And together, we'll create a tomorrow in which all people can thrive.
The NAACP is on the front line in the fight for equality. But we need your support now to keep advancing the cause of racial justice in America. Because we won't go back. So please, join us.
Call or go to keepadvancing.org and give just $19 a month. When you use your credit card, you'll receive this special I'm All In t-shirt to show you're helping advance the rights of Black Americans.
I'm all in for a great education.
I'm all in for health equity.
I'm all in to lead the fight for equality.
We're all in for the NAACP.
This is the moment to use your power for good. So please, become an NAACP champion for change today. Call or go online to keepadvancing.org right now.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies. Or call 1-800-527-0100. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
You know those fat Hoka sneakers? Nice shoes, but the price? Not as nice. However, Skechers Max Cushioning are just as fabulous at a price that blows them away. Get insane comfort and cushioning, including hands-free Skechers slip-ins. Try Skechers Max Cushioning.
Is your shower trying to tell you something? Is getting in and out of the bathtub becoming a safety concern? Are you worried about the cost of a bathroom remodel that could go on for weeks and weeks? Well, now you can have a gorgeous new bath or shower with a one-day jacuzzi bath remodel that's safer at a price you can afford. We're waiving all installation costs and postponing all payments for up to 1 year.
Oh my gosh, it is beautiful. Oh.
From soft close shower doors and adjustable shower heads to features like grab bars and custom seats that combine safety and style, it's never been easier. Get your free design consultation, schedule your one-day installation, and start loving your new bath or shower right away.
Call or go online. Right now, we are waiving all installation costs and offering no interest and no payments for up to 1 year. Go to jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 800-378-9643. Call now.
Your loved ones are getting older, and they need your support. Care.com is here to help. It's an easy way to find background-checked senior caregivers in your area and some peace of mind. See why millions of families have trusted Care. Go to Care.com now.
There has been pretty serious, pretty intense conversation on that terrible killing of the United Health CEO, Brian Thompson, ever since the day it happened. Now, Luigi Mangione has pled not guilty to 11 charges. That's the update in that court process as of last week. He faces murder and terrorism charges. But the case, and separate from the actual sort of calls for vigilante-style attacks on people, the case itself has really brought to the fore much deeper, larger concerns and conversations about growing inequality in America. So that begins with the healthcare system and doesn't even end there. There are people who've worked in the industry now who are also using this moment to speak out. A former executive writing in this New York Times piece that what he saw made him quit a long while back. That's Wendell Potter, who worked at Cigna in their corporate communications. looking at this particular case, he says it's reinvigorated a conversation that they had about suppressing, basically, these very critiques in an industry that puts, quote, profits above patients. And much of the discussion that began with the sort of initial debate about, well, murder is wrong and murder is murder and killing someone in broad daylight is wrong, that piece of it, which goes to law and order and crime, quickly morphed into the larger conversation of, even if that is true, and hopefully most people in a civilized society still believe in that rule of law and against violence, but if you agree with that, then what happens when other people are taking actions that lead to avoidable loss of life? And you don't need to have the lawyerly sort of academic discussion about what you call it. Do you call that negligence? Do you call that manslaughter? It's certainly different than first-degree murder, but ethically, what do we do about that? And is that what we want? And is that acceptable with companies that already make a lot of money claiming they're going to provide you health coverage in the event that you need it, and when you need it most, they deny you? The rich are also getting richer against this backdrop. I want to show you just one headline. There are many out there, but when you look at the hoarding of wealth by a small group of people, Bloomberg, the financial outlet, notes that the world's 500 richest people are now holding $10 trillion in wealth this year. And if all boats were rising in this tide, you might have a different dynamic or reaction to that, even though that is an incredible amount of wealth hoarding that can't possibly be spent in those people's lifetimes and likely the lifetimes of their children. But when you look at this, the raw national data, which we have from the federal government, the median wage an American is making is just over $1,000 a week in the first quarter of 24, which doesn't get you very far, and that's before you run into unplanned health costs, which might be the thing that saves or doesn't save the life of you or your loved ones. Americans have very few options against rising inequality and a heck of a lot of understandable rage about the people at the top doing this. With all that said, I want to bring in the very person I quoted. Wendell Potter worked as a senior corporate executive in communications at Cigna. He wrote that op-ed for the Times, and he's written several books and been called upon long before this recent incident to discuss what is wrong with this healthcare industry, as well as how other healthcare reforms like Obamacare function. He leads the Lower Out-of-Pocket Now coalition. You might be the ideal guest for a non-ideal situation in America. Welcome.
Thank you, Ari. Good to be on your show.
Let's start with the point I raised, that if you put aside what I'm calling somewhat legal semantics, there has to be a regulatory, a societal, and an ethical obligation of these healthcare companies to provide the care they promise rather than deny it to people who played by the rules, paid in, and are facing life and death situations.
There should be, and there used to be. It's not been so many years ago that was kind of the way health insurance worked in this country. But in the mid-1990s, things changed. And back then or before then, most of us got our health insurance from nonprofit Blue Cross plans or other nonprofit organizations. Since then, the big companies that dominate the industry are New York Stock Exchange corporations, mega corporations that have really put profits over the needs of patients for many, many years now. And this is what happens when you allow Wall Street to run your system of health insurance. These companies have to show these investors and Wall Street financial analysts every 3 months that they're meeting those investors' profit expectations. And they do that in ways that make it more and more difficult for people to get the care that they need and to be able to afford that care, even if they have health insurance. That's why I lead that coalition, because one of the ways that they have been able to penalize us and make it so difficult for us to get the care that we need is making us pay tens of thousands of dollars in many cases for our care before our insurance policies will kick in these days.
Yeah. When you look at what they sometimes call medical ethics, there are situations that are difficult, but where doctors might land on the side of not providing a certain type of care. Someone who is 90 years old, terminal, and a very complex procedure may or may not add some months. And the doctors say no. And that still can be heart-wrenching and debatable. I want to be very clear, and a lot of people watching or living in America know this already, right? Although, Wendell, I don't know if you know, sometimes on the news we tell people things they already know. That's not the main issue here. The issue are situations where someone needs life-saving care. The doctors are ready to do it. And as you said, it's the Wall Street-driven corporation. So I want to read from an example you give where you write that this helped you decide to leave. 2008, a 17-year-old leukemia patient in California had a scheduled liver transplant. And then it was, you write, postponed at the last minute when Cigna told her surgeons that the company, Cigna, would not pay. And then you explain how these things go down. Her family stirred up so much media attention that Cigna relented. But it was too late. She died a few hours after Cigna's change of heart. Tell us about that and what it reveals, that the company is, according to that story, literally trying to see what it can get away with, including a situation that might result in the loss of life that otherwise is savable. But if there's too much heat, they back down, which raises the question, why couldn't they have done the thing they're supposed to do, provide the health coverage to begin with?
Yeah, what these companies do is they know that most people take a denial as the final answer, and that most people will not fight that denial. They will not pursue an appeal that they're entitled to. In this case, Natalie Sarkeesian's family did. Cigna still said no, so the company became the family became a very squeaky wheel, and it became a huge PR nightmare for Cigna, and the company eventually relented. This happens all the time when a case becomes something that the media takes an interest in. The insurance company in question will usually relent and reverse that denial because they want that PR problem to go away. But they just are counting on people not knowing how to even appeal a decision, even if it's life-threatening. And also keep in mind that most people, when you're sick, you just don't have the energy and sometimes the ability to advocate for yourself. And it can be a very complicated procedure because these companies purposely make it very difficult. Only about 10% or fewer people actually appeal these denials. When they do, the majority are approved. So that just goes to show you that medically necessary care is being denied day in and day out. And often it's deadly, as it was for Natalie Sarkeesian. It happens every single day. And it's only occasionally that a story captures the media's attention.
Yeah. Well, you've been a reformer in this space for a long time, which is why we wanted to sort of return to this issue. We're starting this new year, a lot of new stories, but we want to stay on what's been an important issue for a long time. Wendell Potter, thank you.
Thank you, Maury. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. I can tell folks that Trump and Vance have had a lot of talk about doing whatever they want, regardless of the law. Now the Chief Justice has some words they may want to heed.
Well, would you look at that?
Jerry, you gotta see this.
Seen it. Trust me, after 15 walks, gets a little old.
Yeah, I really should be retired by now.
Wish I invested when I had the chance. To the moon. Unbelievable.
Stop waiting. Start investing. E-Trade from Morgan Stanley.
For plant-based healthy blood pressure support, there's one brand at Walmart that stands above the rest. It's Super Beets. Discover why more cardiologists recommend Super Beets for heart health support than any other beet brand at superbeets.com.
Oof, stuck paying for that old phone? Don't be. You know, at Verizon, we'll pay off your phone, and you'll get iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence on us. Now with Genmoji. That's a value of up to $1,800, only on Verizon.
It's time to feed the dogs real food in the right amount. A healthy weight can help dogs live a longer, happier life. The Farmer's Dog makes weight management easy with fresh food pre-portioned for your dog's needs. It's an idea whose time has come.
No young person should ever have to worry about having a safe place to sleep at night, or a warm meal to eat, or whether anyone cares about them.
I grew up in poverty, and I actually became physically homeless right after I turned 16.
I didn't have anywhere to sleep, and I didn't really have friends or family that could support me.
To be homeless as a teen, I didn't ask for that.
1 in 10 young adults will experience a form of homelessness this year, and that's unacceptable. But the good news is there is an organization making a big difference. Covenant House.
For the young people who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations, Covenant House is there providing safety, hope, and a brighter future. Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love.
For over 50 years, Covenant House has been helping youth in crisis and giving them the support and tools they need to succeed in life.
Without the Covenant House, I honestly could not tell you where I would be today.
Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
I would not be here today if it weren't for the kindness of strangers, people who donated to Covenant House so that they could support me when I couldn't support myself.
I have no words to express how Covenant House changed my life.
Your monthly gift is urgently needed to reach young people in communities like yours who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations.
Your support makes the work of Covenant House possible.
Call or go online to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month.
Just because it's wet outside, you don't need to wear boots. Presenting Skechers waterproof sneakers with rugged 100% waterproof construction in a comfy, breathable, lightweight, easy-to-wear sneaker. Ditch the boots and experience comfy, capable Skechers waterproof sneakers.
If you're frustrated with occasional bloating or gas, your body's giving you signs. It's time to try Align. Align probiotic was specifically designed by gastroenterologists to help relieve your occasional bloating and gas. When you feel the signs, it's time to try Align.
Your best defense against erosion and cavities is strong enamel. Nothing beats it. I recommend Pronamel Active Shield because it actively shields the enamel to defend against erosion and cavities. I think that this product is a game changer for my patients. It really works.
Hi, I'm Tony Hawk, and like many of you, I take a statin to reduce cholesterol. But statins can also deplete CoQ10 levels. That's why my doctor recommended Cunol CoQ10. Cunol has the #1 cardiologist-recommended form.
End-of-year review. And in this one, his year-end report, he states judicial independence is undermined when the other branches are unless they're firm in responsibility to enforce the court's decrees. In other words, the court says what the law is, the executive still has to enforce it. Quote, elected officials from across the spectrum have raised the specter, he says, of open disregard for federal court rulings. Many court watchers and journalists said that given recent events, that's clearly a reference to Vance. The Chief Justice says these dangerous suggestions, however sporadic, must be soundly rejected. And that comes at a time where the year-end report, of course, can rightfully deal with the threats from Vance and politicians, but it's not necessarily also able to reverse the problems that Roberts has not been able to control at the court. Just look at the crashing favorability of the Supreme Court when it's been embroiled in these ethics scandals, in grifting, in a court that aspires to give rules to everyone else but hasn't been following them itself, from Justice Alito flying an upside-down flag in solidarity, apparently with the Jan 6 insurrectionists, to Justice Thomas repeatedly abusing his position to grift on the court. In other words, the Supreme Court has a lot of issues to deal with as it starts the new year. We'll be right back.
Childhood cancer it's a long road. It's hard, but St. Jude has gotten us through it. St. Jude is hope that you have a chance at life. And it goes such a long way for every child diagnosed with cancer because the research is being shared all over the world. It's awesome.
Hate and extremism in the United States are on the rise. In fact, there are more than 1,400 hate groups in our country today. Groups that vilify others for their race, religion, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And extremist groups that spread dangerous conspiracies and encourage violent acts. This is a dark chapter in our history, but it can be rewritten. Since 1971, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been fighting hate and defending justice and equality in the U.S. But we can't do it without support from people like you. Please call now or go online to helpfighthate.org to become a friend of the center. For just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, you can support the fight for justice. In recent years, hate crimes against Black, Jewish, and LGBTQ Americans have nearly doubled across the U.S. This violence has no place in a just society.
Hate and extremism are dividing us like never before. But together, we can protect our communities and continue providing no-cost legal help to those impacted by hate violence.
So please call or go to helpfighthate.org and give just $19 a month. When you use your credit card, you'll receive this special Fight Hate t-shirt to show you're standing up for civil rights. The fate of our country is in our hands. We can and will build a more just future, but it won't come without a fight. That's why we need your support today.
Southern Poverty Law Center staff are in the courts defending freedom and in the halls of power advocating for change and working hard to prevent recruitment into extremist groups throughout the United States. Together, we can push back against this wave of hate and extremism.
Become a friend of the center today. Call or go online to helpfighthate.org right now.
Donald Trump plans to reshape the U.S. government.
Democrats have wasted no time in laying the groundwork to fight the incoming Trump administration.
Donald Trump wants a presidential cabinet full of loyalists.
Don't miss the weekends, Saturday and Sunday mornings at 8
on MSNBC.
MSNBC Premium gives you early access and ad-free listening to Rachel Maddow's chart-topping series, MSNBC Original Podcasts, exclusive bonus content, and all of your favorite MSNBC shows now ad-free. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
What drives your business? Numbers, data, sales? Sure, but it's your people who define your business. That's why Paychex just reinvented the way to find and keep the best people. Smart, streamlined HR technology assisted by AI and our team of HR experts. Everything you need to recruit, motivate, and support your employees. Because your people are your business. Start reinventing your business at paychex.com/TV.
This bakery needs new equipment fast to keep up with demand. So they're going to OnDeck, the online lender that makes it easy to choose your loan and if approved, get funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
It's a lot to be a caregiver and a daughter because you kind of have to take a step back. Getting some help would be a great relief.
From companions to helpers to caregivers, find all the senior care you need at care.com.
Elizabeth L. Cheney for putting the American people over party.
President Biden there, you could see, awarding a Presidential Citizens Medal to Liz Cheney for her work leading the January 6th committee. Her co-chair, Benny Thompson, also honored in that celebration today. The ceremony comes just days before the infamous date, January 6th. So we're starting the year together. I'll give you one more reminder. You can always find me at Ari Melber and at arimelber.com. In fact, if you go to arimelber.com, on a personal note, I can tell you where I went hiking over the break. That's just at my newsletter, arimelber.com. That does it for us, though. The Readout with Joy Reid starts now.
Tonight on The Readout.
It's pretty damn simple. Our democracy begins and ends with the duties of citizenship. That's our work for the ages. That's what all of you, and I mean this, all of you embody.
Late today, President Biden awarding civilian medals to 20 people, including the 2 representatives who led the House January 6th investigation. Meanwhile, this year's January 6th electoral certification could face a different, though less violent disruption. It can't happen, it turns out, without a speaker. And Republicans face yet another potentially chaotic speaker election tomorrow. Also tonight, America's billionaires and near billionaires are preparing to take power with Trump as their frontman, having convinced millions of Americans for decades that their own family's financial security is much less important than allowing the very richest to get even richer. And we begin tonight with what should be a happy new year. But instead, it's a tragic one, marred by violence and death. 14 people were killed and more than 30 injured